everyone. The most boring episode in the world. Off we go.
This is Cloud and the Edge. No, I'm not going to do that. Welcome to the Growth Pod. Here we are again.
You just can't introduce yourself.
Yeah.
If I were you, I wouldn't be able to do that.
My name's Sahib.
Yeah, silly name. Bibs.
Yeah, Bibs. Welcome to another episode of the Growth Pod. I am Sahib and this is Ed. We are going to be deep diving. That's a lie. We're going to be diving into cloud and the edge to really set the scene. The reason for this episode is to really lay the foundation for future episodes where we will talk about VR, AR, even an episode on the metaverse, which should be coming up very soon. But all of that would not be possible without the cloud and the edge. So Ed, do you want to take us away?
Yeah, sure. So to start us off, I'm going to try and use a metaphor to explain how the cloud began and how it's taken us to where we are today. So I was asleep one night, or trying to sleep one night, and I had this idea that Tesco, one of the best supermarkets at logistics, were using cloud technology in order to process all of their till information constantly on a by-hour basis or by 6-hour basis to update their maps for their logistics. And so in my mind, I thought, we've got an old school cloud Van Damme sat in a place linking all the Tesco's up together, doing all of this computing power for them. So, big muscly guy in a fridge lifting all of those till orders. Now, that's all well and good, and let's say Amazon Web Services or another were the first to offer this to them, helping them cut costs on an economies of scale basis, and they don't need that data that often, so they're able to download every 3 hours, 6 hours, and that was fine. However, today we move forward and we need better latency for the large host of reasons, gaming, etc., that we'll move on to, and this meant that we need an edge. Now, Edge was a wrestler in the early 2000s, absolutely massive guy, could get around anywhere, much like edge computing, could sort things out really quickly, low latency, much like edge computing, and was pretty ugly, much like edge computing. And this combination of Cloud Van Damme and the edge now provides us with low latency, distributed, large economies of scale, thus cost-effective cloud computing as a service for a whole host of different companies and reasons.
Yeah, and there's a few players who are in the market and they've been here since the dawn of time. We'll start with them now, really. Amazon as the leader, AWS started in 2006. Second and third are Microsoft Azure, and finally is Google Cloud Platform. They together have a market share of 31% for Amazon, Microsoft is about 22%, and Google Cloud Platform is a smaller one, around 8%. The last two actually started in 2008, so you can see that Amazon and Jeff Bezos had a bit of a head start in terms of going to the market with infrastructure as a service. The other two were platform as a service and SaaS. But
it's typical Jeff Bezos, right? He's in the internet because of its growth. He sees economies of scale opportunity, and he's very good at delivering to the customer. You can watch endless YouTube videos of him focusing on the customer, and as with most other things he's done, he knows that if you can do it bigger, you can probably do it cheaper, and your margin is my opportunity. I think to touch on then what happened since then, and let's look at, say, Salesforce, probably one of the biggest users of cloud to deliver to consumers. It can be said about certain parts of tech that the technology is won when the consumer doesn't know that they're using that particular technology.
And consumer here is from the perspective of the business, and them as the consumer of that software. They just use a CRM, and the CRM does the job.
And they don't care that it's on a cloud in the same way that an Uber rider doesn't really care how the tech works or how it's distributed. They're just there using that. Well done. The cloud has kind of done its job. I think you said something about, in a previous conversation we had about Salesforce's multi-story car park.
Yeah. Exactly. So they have this analogy where they've got a multi-story building. Just imagine that there's varying sizes of rooms. So you've got small rooms, large rooms. They call this analogy like multi-tenancy. So as a small, medium or large size business, you have the opportunity to scale with Salesforce. So Salesforce says, we own the infrastructure, you come stay with us, but we'll help you kind of flex up and down the rooms depending on what your specific situation is. And that really does give a kind of business customer kind of peace of mind. And I suppose that's the whole proposition around SaaS, is like you have this front end which you just interact with to have your daily job nice and easy, but don't worry, we'll kind of worry about the application, the OS and all that jazz on the back end. Nice and easy. If
we look forward again, then another great winner of the cloud in recent years has been Netflix. And we can talk about conflict of interest here. Is that I don't know how many people, probably plenty on this particular podcast, learned that or know that Netflix is sat on Amazon Web Services. So So let's assume that Amazon Web Services went down, like a recent Facebook outage, for example. I think it would be Netflix that got it in the year first, not Amazon. That's then quite strange in that, well, hang on a minute here, Amazon Prime Video is now a competitor to Netflix. It's almost a bit dodgy that Amazon is hosting its competitors, almost in the same way that it has done a lot of history in the store. And we've seen the store recently come under some heat around how they're managing some of their customers / competitors' expectations. Should we move forward then again and think about what's going to happen next on the edge rather than in the cloud?
Well, actually, just to kind of create a segue. So you take Netflix as an example. They're trying to expand into gaming. That's more cloud that they have to kind of have available for their customers to have low latency experiences with the games that they'll put out. But gaming is going to go so far that it starts to go into gaming with AR, gaming with VR. We already see Apple leverage some of the AR game capabilities. But if we talk about to this slightly utopian and dystopian future where we will always have our glasses on and we'll always be within some kind of gamified future, that's all kind of powered by an edge. And
do you know if Pokemon Go used the edge?
I'm sure it does.
Must have been.
Yeah, and so example, another one, say like Niantic, really good with their kind of on-the-go games. They need to have low latency data processing for their customers or consumers who are always on the go.
I think Microsoft actually have a joint exhibition with somebody at the V&A at the moment where you put a HoloLens on and then we're all walking around. I'm not sure how safe that is. This particular open space with HoloLenses on. That means there's going to be some edge center somewhere that's managing the 120 of us that I assume are in the hall. If you imagine, as you just described, more and more people wearing more and more glasses, the need for both computing power and a data center is just going to rise exponentially, isn't it? I mean, there's going to be an arms race here, is there not?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think just to kind of touch on one point is we're in some kind of edge echo chamber, and we're just kind of wondering why no one's embraced the edge. But we have to first remember that the cloud transformation, digital transformation, is still on its way. It still has a long way to go, and edge is still in its most nascent form. But yeah, like you said, there's so much room to go on and win. So for example, we were listening to this podcast with a guy called Matthew Ball, who is one of the key thinkers around the metaverse, and he shared a stat which was that Amazon have 350 engineers who are trying to improve the computational power of the full AWS stack in order to cope with what the edge and the metaverse can provide for us as consumers.
Yeah, it's that level of the number of software engineers that the likes of Google, Amazon, Microsoft have, that just means nobody else can compete. The telcos have had a look at it, and actually we've seen the telcos, fair enough, are doing a really good job of working out which spaces they think will be in higher edge demand than others, and then renovating those hubs and exchanges into carrier neutral edge spaces. Really good way of managing the assets that you've already got, but you're going to need this software engineer firepower to be able to really deliver what the consumers expect at the edge.
Yeah, and we sort of, I suppose there's another point which I suppose we won't cover, but it's worth remembering, is that the skills requirements for the future are going to be very different to what's kind of required now in terms of jobs. So that IT skill shortage is only going to get bigger, which kind of opens up more room for automation at the edge. It's just another layer on the top of another layer of like computational power. If we just talk about some use cases, so we obviously talk about B2C in terms of like AR, VR and all that jazz. But when you think of the B2B use cases that are available right now, it's predominantly around like logistics and manufacturing and like Ed said, it's like IoT.
Yeah, Microsoft's metaverse stack, which we saw in Nadella's keynote, it was a year and a half, 2 years ago. Very impressive, and it's quite well done. They've named their new piece of hardware Surface, and obviously Surface interacts with an edge. So yes, well done Microsoft, very clever. But it's sure they're going after the B2C angle, and some of the things that we've seen them do in factories and improving the safety, improving the training, improving the censorship. So it's IoT actually finding a purpose, isn't it? I think that's
exactly. It's no longer just a dinner table topic. It's actually starting to go from the what to the kind of like how and what and the why as well. Why is it really important to us, and also the how does it enable us to actually have a bit more of an intelligent business.
Yeah, and again, these users don't really know that they have no clue what an edge or a cloud is. And quite right, it's quite boring, but it's impressive. Well done for delivering a great product, Microsoft, considering where they were 10 years ago.
And you still get your bespoke BMW M3 at the end of it. Just some fancy guys on the other side have some really fancy tech.
Back to task.
Yeah. Some of the other use cases, you got like health And with health, actually, we can't forget the telcos because 5G will be so important to powering the edge. And I think healthcare is still probably further away in terms of the adoption curve. It's probably going to be one of the slower industries.
We've all seen some of these rare use cases where one of the best surgeons in the world, or on one half of the world, is cutting somebody open on the other side. Just imagine if we did that over and over again. Well, the surgeon would be very tired himself personally, but the amount of edge computing capacity and cloud computing capacity that you would need to feel comfortable that the system had enough bandwidth to cope with that. You wouldn't want the wheel of death coming up in the middle of your operation, would you? Right? I mean, demand for all of these things is only going to go up the more use cases that we start bootstrapping into the edge in the cloud.
Exactly, and I think it's probably worth sort of stating here that, you know, as Growth Studio, we don't necessarily do a lot of work with the cloud and the edge, but some of the concepts or the use cases will kind of sit on top. The full edge capability may take years to manifest, but hopefully with the pace of change that we do experience in the world at the moment, it may be sooner rather than later. Any more that you want to cover today, Ed, or do you think we're all?
No, I think this is enough time on what can be quite a dry topic, but hopefully we've brought it to you with a bit of humour and a bit of vision to see that actually all the things that are exciting that are occurring now will only be 10 times more exciting when they're live on a wide distributed edge. Yes, pull the ripcord.
Thank you for joining the Growth Pod. See you soon.